Goldberg. I'm the co-author of Atari Inc. Business is Fun, and today we're going to be interviewing Jim Heller. For those not familiar with him, Jim Heller is the man that actually dumped all those cartridges in Alamogordo, New Mexico. He had basically done it as another day on the job, and he didn't even realize that there were all these stories and myths that grew up around it, and had contacted the original the documentary film crew when he heard about it in the news. He's like, wait a minute, I dumped those. So he was actually there on the scene as part of the documentary crew, and helped them locate it again and dig it up. So we're going to be talking to Jim to learn a bit about him and the background and the story around the dumping and his experience with digging up his day on the job again. So let me just give him a call.
Yes.
Hey, Jim.
Hello, Marty. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing? You're live with the crowd right now.
Great.
I'm going to turn it around so you can see the crowd. 1 second.
Okay. Hey! Hello, everybody.
Great.
Nice shot of the ceiling.
Thank you. Try to attach the camera again.
Okay, so we'll get started. Can you hear me okay?
You're breaking up a little bit, but
Okay.
we'll work with it.
Okay, good. So basically, we're here to learn more about you and your involvement in the infamous dumping in Alamogordo. So basically, if we could start, we'd love to hear a little bit about your background and how you got started at Atari.
Okay. I'm a classically trained chef. I don't know if I told you that. Okay. And trained electronics technician. I've worked for a number of fairly large companies, IBM, Texas Instruments. Ultimately, ended up at a company called Coherent Radiation as their service manager. A gentleman there that I worked with, named Lawrence Shuve, left Coherent Radiation and went to Atari. He'd been at Atari for a couple of months and asked me to come on over as a production supervisor, a test supervisor. So I did. Okay. As I progressed, I went from production supervisor to operations manager, where I ran all of the manufacturing in Sunnyvale, and then went into doing a bunch of site surveys for Atari, traveling a little bit around the world and mostly the U.S. to find new places to put things. Ultimately ended up in a group that was called remanufacturing. We took and received all of the customer returns. Okay. At the end of probably spring of 1983, I got word that all the cartridge receipts and stuff were being moved to El Paso. Okay, I was currently receiving all of the merchandise at one of my facilities and doing the inventory on it, and we're moving it to El Paso. Okay. Shortly after that, they said that they were going to close my facility and move everything to the El Paso facility. When my facility closed in June, we'd sent all our equipment down to El Paso. And in early June, I went to El Paso. This is 1983. And in September of that year, got message that Atari was kind of tired of us sending all the return games back to Sunnyvale for destruction. So they tasked me with finding a new venue to dump all the cartridges. We tried the landfill in El Paso, and it wasn't going to work because there were so many scavengers outside of each truck. It would have just been a good business for some people, but not Atari, because we didn't give away millions of cartridges. So found a dump in New Mexico, in Alamogordo. Alamogordo does not allow the state of Mexico scavenging. So, made a trip up to Alamogordo, landfill, looked at it. It looked like a good place to dump cartridges. The following day, Atari went up there and did the financial stuff. And on Thursday, we started sending truckloads of merchandise to the dump. Monday morning, after we had just started, we'd only been doing it for 3 days, started getting telephone calls from the news media that says some kids were arrested digging up cartridges in the dump. They wanted to know what Atari was doing, dumping cartridges. So we took and I decided to cover up the landfill with concrete, and I did. And I also went to see the concrete being put over the cartridges. And after that, I heard nothing about it for 30 years.
Well, stepping back a second then, so interesting point you mentioned that these were all returns. These were being returned from stores. Were they functioning, non-functioning?
It was almost exclusively new merchandise that had been unsold at our distributors, and they were sending it all back for credit. Okay. There were pallets and pallets of new merchandise that was returned.
Okay, so these are all storage. That brings up an interesting point, which I know you and I had discussed previously. So towards the end of 1982, the end of 1981 going into 1982, you had gotten orders back when you were still with manufacturing to actually start manufacturing for the entire year at once?
That was, came down, they decided that so they could even out the production flow, that they were going to require all of our vendors to pre-order cartridges so we could keep the production even during the year.
During the year.
Okay. Yeah, so everybody had ordered cartridges and they got them whether they could get it or not. It just turned out that the Christmas season turned out in 1982 to be very, very poor. And there was lots and lots of unsold merchandise.
Okay. Did you think that was strange, or because that obviously hadn't been done before, as far as telling retailers to order for an entire year at once in advance?
No, because it sounded like a good idea to me. Because we were typically running in manufacturing, like for game consoles, we were doing it on an order basis, and we wouldn't get the orders until just slightly before Christmas. So it was just go from almost doing nothing to having to hire 600 people within manufacturing. So we didn't make the cartridges where I worked. They were made at other facilities. It just sounded like a good idea to me. I had no idea of the repercussions.
So when did you first start seeing those repercussions?
We started seeing them in the spring of 1983.
Okay, spring of 1983. So from what you saw, as far as all the titles being returned, it was a pretty wide selection. Were there any specific titles, or?
There were no specific titles. There was kind of some of everything. In one of the warehouses that I went into, I noticed an awful lot of sports games. The football, basketball, baseball, the stuff that they weren't any good to begin with.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's true in a lot of ways. Yeah. So then you're seeing all these cartridges piling up, being returned from stores. They're asking you to dump it. Now, normally, when you're dumping materials or when you were destroying things for the company, would you chop them up? Would you normally, completely destroy them? Or why weren't these being destroyed originally in El Paso, in Alamogordo too?
Okay, well, I said the Alamogordo dump got shut down. Okay, but in the spring of 1983, I had remanufactured and had in the warehouse 140,000 2600 games that had been totally remanufactured. Okay, the only thing that was used on them was the electronics. Everything else was new. I got word that I needed to send all of those to a company in San Jose to be ground up into little pieces. Okay, and I documented that on pictures and have those available if you need to show them on the screen. Okay, and once things were moved to El Paso was sending stuff back to California to be destroyed with the cartridges. It was totally useless merchandise. Nobody wanted it. So, and for some reason, and I was never told why, Atari didn't want to give them to boys clubs, girls clubs, or civic organizations. They just wanted them destroyed. I thought it was a waste, but just doing the job.
So again, so the ones in that you dumped in Alamogordo, then, so why weren't those initially chopped up and destroyed like most of the other things you were destroying?
Those were received in Alamogordo. Okay, they were fixing games down there. The repair facility had been moved to El Paso.
Right.
And this is just stuff they had received in the warehouse, plus new merchandise that had come in. The stuff that was sent to Sunnyvale for inventory, it sat in the warehouse.
Okay. So you said when they started pilfering some of the cartridges in the games, were they pilfering them off the trucks or from the pit itself, or where were they actually taking them?
From what I understand, I only had known that it was the kids who were into the dump, and they actually went in and dug the cartridges out from underneath the concrete. Okay, I found out when I was down there that some of the cartridges were taken off of pallets before they had a chance to run them over.
Okay.
Okay, but what started everything was the kids just in there digging around.
Okay. So, so you mentioned previously, so that's why you originally poured the concrete then, because people were starting to pilfer.
Right, and I had no idea what to do that Monday morning, and I figured, well, cover them up with concrete, that'll slow them down. And talking with the operator of the dump, he said it mostly worked.
So I know you mentioned to me previously too that you weren't sure how much concrete to use, so the entire thing wasn't capped, just the main portion of it.
That is true. I was about 3 dump truck loads short.
Okay. So you wrapped it up that day. You mentioned that you had taken pictures because just in case you had an inkling you needed to find it again someday.
Yeah.
Okay. So what, I mean, really, because I know I've mentioned this to you the other day, what really gave you that feeling over any of the other stuff you destroyed that maybe you need to find this again somewhere?
It was just one of those things. There was extra film left in the camera from other projects, and I figured I was going to use the rest of the film. So I go, why not take enough pictures to show what the entire area looked like? So you could find it if you wanted to. And my pictures were actually good enough to locate the cartridges.
Right, because that's something a lot of people don't know. So you actually helped the crew locate, the documentary crew locate where these cartridges were.
Indirectly, I had sent a bunch of the pictures to Fuel Entertainment. They forwarded them to Joe Lewandowski, who was actually running the dig, and he used my pictures to actually locate the exact location. It was Zach Penn who said if I hadn't have done that, they would have missed by about 300 feet, and there would have been no dig.
So it probably would have been like a Geraldo vault situation.
Absolutely. You never know what they might have dug up.
Yeah, it definitely wouldn't have been cartridges, so I don't want to even think about what they would have.
Yeah, the cartridges were in a pretty small area, probably 50 feet by 100 feet. So, considering it was a couple hundred acres of the dump, that wasn't a very big dump site as far as area.
So it would have been very easy for them to miss otherwise.
Absolutely. And they just hit the outside edge of it. I was told that there was actually a little concrete that was mixed in with some of the cartridges. So they were just right on the edge of it. And they found them at, I think, 28 feet, and the majority of them are at 31.5 feet.
Okay. So you said, I know you were saying total number of cartridges dumped around 730 to 750,000?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So what were your thoughts then, flash forward, you know, decades later, and you're hearing about this, all of a sudden that they're going to dig up these things, and you're hearing stories about it being millions and millions of cartridges there, and it's all a big ET dump. What were your thoughts? What's the first thing that went through your mind?
It was kind of hard to believe at first, you know, because when I heard about that, I started researching it on the internet and found out that I had dumped these things in the middle of the night. Yeah, no, not during regular business hours. And that Atari was trying to hide their mistakes. No, they weren't trying to do that. Kind of funny, really, because it was just mostly baloney that the media had, you know, taken something and run with it and then added their own spins on it. And it was silly. If somebody would have asked me anytime over the previous 30 years, that I was told where they were, how many they were, basically what they were, and there was no mystery at all. So I thought it was kind of fun.
Well, to a lot of people, I mean, it became a very popular part of gaming history lore to people. So, I mean, that's why they did the documentary, really. So, you said you contacted the documentary crew then, and then what was the response? Were they really excited to hear from you, or were they like, who are you? Who's this guy?
Yeah, I've kind of heard that before. It was on a weekend that I actually saw a Yahoo News article on the internet that said Fuel Entertainment was going to be doing a documentary on the Atari cartridges. I didn't have a telephone number for Fuel Entertainment, so I contacted Associated Press. I said, "You guys want to know the real story?" And they came back a few minutes later and said, "Nope." Okay, so they missed out. I dug around the internet further, and I found the email address for Fuel Entertainment. It was on Sunday, and so I sent an email and told them all about it. And I was surprised, about half an hour later, I got back an email from the head of Fuel Entertainment. Goes, "Yes, we want to talk to you." And he connected me with Daniel Snector, who was in charge of the project, and it went from there.
That's great. So then you started sending them the materials. What was their response when you started telling them what was actually buried there? Did they like want to keep that under wraps, or what was the general idea?
General idea was they were really surprised, number one, that I had pictures and that it was documented. Okay. Although there were some pictures that were taken there. I had color pictures. Okay, so I'd taken color slides. Things went kind of slow to start off with because they couldn't get permission from the state of New Mexico to actually do the dig. They had a lot of preliminary work to do. But I had enough documentation when they were ready to start filming. They got me in a conference call with Zach Penn, and I sent him all the information I had too.
Okay.
And ultimately, in the documentary, the main part of it, almost all the still pictures that I sent to Zach Penn were actually in the documentary. Just no credit that they were from me.
Right. Yeah, I know that's something you and I talked about, because like in the scene in the documentary where Joe is holding up those papers and waving them around when they're interviewing him, it's got photos from the dig. Those are actually the ones you sent and all the materials that you put together for them.
Yes.
So that's pretty good. The dig happened about a year ago now. So you were on site, which a lot of people didn't realize at that time. Would you say they were trying to keep you, who you were away from everybody, so that they really didn't know and were generally surprised when you started digging?
They weren't just trying, they did. They had a young lady that was assigned to keep me out of everybody else's view. Okay. There was a time that I was sitting in the hotel because they had better internet access from the lobby, and she came in and said, "Jim, go to your room," because they had some people showing up and they didn't want me to interface with them. So they did a good job of keeping me away from everybody.
Well,
They wanted things to be a surprise when they found out that, hey, like when I talked to Howard, I buried your cartridges, sorry, Howard.
Sorry, Howard. That's funny. So were you actually around the dig area when they first started bringing up the first cartridges, or did they still have you off in your a different little area?
No, I was there. I was just kind of separated from there.
Okay.
Standing off to the sun. I actually got there early in the morning before the people started showing up. So I was there for the entire day. Actually, I was one of the few people that was, other than the archaeologist, that was allowed down in the hole where they were digging around at. Okay, so I have some pictures from close-ups. I don't think anybody else has.
So,
I haven't sent them either.
so how was it actually seeing these 30-some years later? When they first started bringing them up.
I was totally amazed at the condition everything was in, as far as the physical condition. I had no idea how corroded they were. But things were still in many of them, new boxes, still shrink wrapped with the outer corrugate. They were in excellent condition. Of course, they were sitting off to the side of the dump. There would have been some nicer cartridges, I'm sure, in the middle of the dump.
Okay.
I don't know if I told you, but the dump site was inadvertently found, verified in 2004.
Really?
Yeah. There was an environmental study done in 2004 at the dump site, and there were test holes dug all over the dump. Well, one test hole happened to hit the concrete cap.
Really?
The only one, 100 or so holes were dug. But found out later when I asked Joe about it, he said they were afraid if they went there, they might dig up something else that they didn't want to get into. And that was the mercury-laced pigs that had been buried in concrete at the dump.
And that's a really interesting thing, because I was surprised. I assumed that the landfill, anything in there was going to be just basically like stew, like a soup, because of how that's what a landfill's for. It's meant to keep those bad chemicals and other things in as they deteriorate. So I would have assumed everything would have just percolated together.
Yeah, I would have assumed the same thing, but Alamogordo has very little rain, okay, it's definitely desert. The water table is somewhere between 50 and 75 feet, and these were sitting at 30 feet, so they were out of the water table. And like I said, they don't get enough rain there to actually percolate down, especially at 30 feet. But it take an awful lot of rain to percolate down to the 30-foot plus.
So, what is your thought? Obviously you've seen the documentary. What are your thoughts on it?
I thought the documentary was very well done, but I was kind of disappointed that it didn't cover the actual dig itself too much. They just told about the general parts of Atari and Howard's part, and a vindication for Howard that he didn't write the world's worst video game. But I would have expected that there was going to be more behind the scenes, we'll say, about the people at the dump, and there was a number of people down there that were interviewed on camera, but not many of them actually ended up in the film.
Yeah, and I noticed because you weren't actually in the film either. They put you into the extras that are available.
That's true.
Have you had a chance to see that section? To see yourself from there?
I've got it queued up right now if you wanted to see it.
Sure. If you want to play it in the background a second, that'd be good. I don't think most people have actually seen that footage, but I'm not sure if it'll actually come through on Skype without a display.
Well, let's figure out how to do it.
We can do it another time. That's fine. We don't have a lot of time anyway.
Okay.
Do you have any?
Okay.
Do you have any of the photographs around you, as far as that you had taken, or are they all just digitized right now?
They're all digitized.
Okay.
Okay. I did show them to my son, so I know it's possible to display them on the screen. I just don't quite remember how now.
That's okay. We've got such a finicky connection. I don't want to take a chance on it going out with the time we have left. So again, there was this idea that's still going on. Some people believe it was still a massive, it was still a big ET dump, even though They cataloged over 60 titles were buried there, including Atari 5200 games. And there, you know, there was talk too. I mean, the myth had grown to like there being prototypes and, you know, rare. That was their rare dumping grounds.
Yeah, there were.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, that's Jim. Okay, sorry. So this is, you're showing the photographs. That's what happened. We thought we lost you there.
Oh, no. Nope, I would just probably push the wrong button.
Okay, so yeah, why don't you bring a couple of those up?
Let's see if I can see them. Okay. You still hear me?
Yeah, we can still hear it.
Okay. This was the last day of the dump. Just taking pictures and showing the crap there. Somebody who was actually digging and covering things up. This was the second day when I went to check out the site. You might notice how deep that pit is. The pit had just been done.
So just that one little section there was just where everything was being destroyed.
Yeah, here was the pit the very first day. It had just been done. That's one of the machines that was used to cover it up with. There you go. There's the proof that I covered up things with concrete. That's some more of the junk on the day of the covering up. You notice a lot of cardboard. There's pallets all over. Everything was palletized that went to the dump.
Yeah, you can actually see the pallets in that one.
Yeah, there are lots of pallets here.
So yeah, I mean, you can see it's not an ocean of ETs. It's lots of different colors there, lots of different games. Pretty much what it looks like asteroids there, and a couple of
Oh, yeah.
a bunch of defenders too, which is exactly what they dug up initially.
Yeah. Let me see if I can get you back here.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. Do I still have you? My screen changed.
Yeah. We're getting multiples of you now. I tell you what, I'm gonna hang up real quick and call you right back, so we don't have to. You don't have to worry about this. All right? Just give me 1 second here. I'll call you right back. I can figure out which one of these are the real ones.
Same screen again. Okay.
Okay, yeah, for some reason my camera's off.
You got it. Look like off on the screen.
Oh, there we go. 1 second. There we go. Okay. Thank you.
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
True, and I'm in computers for a living, so it's even worse. Anyways, so thank you for sharing those with us. I mean, you know, because most people hadn't seen that. I know I reproduced some of those in the article that's out in Retro magazine right now that talks about your background and the history of the dig, etc. So again, so really, I mean, you had the foresight to take these because you thought it was interesting enough that
Yeah,
people
that's pretty
were-
good.
What's that? What did you say?
Yeah, you're really breaking up there, Marty.
Okay, yeah,
I,
it's got to be the connection. Is that a little better?
yeah, I think it's mostly the connection.
Okay, and I apologize for that. We're on the hotel's Wi-Fi system, so it's the best we can get right now.
Yeah, that doesn't get you much in the way of bandwidth.
Yeah. So what we're going to do right now, we'll start taking questions from the audience. We'll pass the microphone around. I'm actually going to turn my camera around here so that you can see the people as they're asking. And if you can't hear the question, let us know and I'll repeat it. Okay?
Okay, I'm real good at not hearing things, so
Okay.
be prepared to intervene.
All right, back here, give us your name and question.
Hi, I'm Tony. I think it might have been a little ahead of its time, but you think e-cycling might have helped Atari's plight at the time?
Interesting enough, where everything was done, Alamogordo dump, went to Marketplace and Fox in San Jose, and they were a metals recycler. So the stuff was recycled in San Jose, just not the stuff at the dump.
Okay. Next question.
Yeah, did you and the other guys working on this take anything home for yourselves?
You mean from the dump?
Yeah.
No, that was belonged to the city of Alamogordo, and taking souvenirs was not allowed.
Kind of a piggyback off of that, so we won't be seeing any, kind of a piggyback off that, we won't be seeing any commemorative plaques with chunks of cartridges bolted to them or anything?
Okay, that I don't understand the question, Marty.
He basically wanted to know if there would be any, you think there'll be any souvenirs with like chunks of cartridges on plaques and everything?
Have no idea. That's strictly up to the city of Alamogordo.
Okay. Next question.
Hi, yeah, I'm John. I have a quick question. One of the rumors out there was that there was a gold ET cartridge that was buried in this dump. Could you make a response to that at all?
Okay, Marty again.
Gold ET cartridge.
One of the rumors was that there was a gold ET cartridge that was buried in the dump. Can you verify that at all?
No, sure couldn't. I think if anybody would have sent a gold cartridge back, somebody at the El Paso facility would have commandeered it.
Okay. Next question.
Hello, Jim. My name is Kevin. Can you hear me?
Go ahead and ask your question. I can repeat it.
Did you guys actually dump marbles, or was it successful? Like
What?
1983, we're talking about the cartridge with the navies, you know what I'm saying? I can't remember what system was going on. It was Atari, so
I'm not quite sure.
the marbles from the Atari from 1983.
It was, yeah, it was all Atari.
Yeah, just asking.
He was asking if it was all Atari games buried there. Are you aware of anything for any other companies or systems or anything?
It would have been possible. Atari tended to get back things that didn't belong to us. Okay, at the one warehouse, actually there in El Paso, they would get back watches and stuff like that. So it is possible.
Possible. Okay. That's great. Next question.
Down in front.
I'm old enough to remember, but I don't remember what was the gaming console that kind of put Atari under. In other words, what was the marketplace like that caused you to dump these cartridges? Was it ColecoVision? Was it what was the gaming system that got more popular than Atari?
I personally don't know if it was any particular console that did it. It was a combination of a competition and Atari's greed. Okay, they wanted the whole market for themselves. They would not license making cartridges. They would not issue the code for the computer system or the VCS. And they had too much of the market for too long, and they were, let me give you an example of what Atari did that was stupid. My mother worked for Atari right after my father had passed, and she worked in the county. I did a budget, and my budget ended up on her desk, and she said afterwards that she had found $1 million error in my budget. Okay. And she brought it to her supervisor, and they said, "Don't worry about it, we make plenty of money." Arrogance on Atari's part. They just didn't pay attention to the market, okay, and the fact that they had oversold by requiring people to pre-order cartridges. And the fact, too, to me, that they did not appreciate the engineering staff who actually wrote the games. Interesting enough, I made more money than the engineers did, and they're the ones who did all the work. Okay, so just a combination of things. Hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, next question.
Hi, my name's Ted. When and why did you leave Atari?
Why did I leave? I got laid off. Just like everybody else. Okay, I was actually working for Warner Communications, okay, assigned to Atari. Warner had a policy that at the end of your 7 years there, you got an extra 7 weeks of vacation. Warner let everybody who stayed with the company to complete their 7 years. Just so happened to be that the Friday after I covered up the landfill with concrete, I was laid off. Okay. I actually did go back to El Paso in October. I did as a contractor. I did their 1984 budget. But basically, I got laid off.
Next question. Any more? Okay, that looks like about it. Well, Jim, I want to thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate you taking the time on this Saturday morning to talk to everybody here and fill them in on everything about your history and the background and the dump. Do you have any last words to say to everybody?
Oh, I thank everybody for coming and listening to me, and I apologize for not using Skype like it's supposed to be to recall me.
That's no problem.
I did take pictures, by the way, Marty, of the cartridges that were still in the dump. I think I have the only ones of those that's available. So if you'd like some close-ups of the stuff, I can send them those to you.
Yeah, that's no problem at all. That'd be great. Love to see those. So that's about it for today then. So again, thank you once again, Jim, and have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Thank you.